Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're jumping straight into episode 2 of the Okoye family drama, and it's aptly titled Mama's Prophecy. We are unpacking the absolute collapse of what was once literally Africa's biggest music duo, P-Square. This whole thing centers around a prophetic warning from their mother, Mama Josephine Okoye, against their older brother Jude taking over management. We're going to look at how his grip on corporate control ultimately tore the twin brothers apart. So let's go right back to where the cracks first started.
Because you have to ask yourself, what actually happens when a family deliberately ignores a mother's warning? That's the huge question hanging over this entire story. The corporate and family disaster we're seeing play out in the headlines right now, it was completely foreshadowed years ago by the matriarch of the family. It's honestly like a Shakespearean tragedy, a totally disregarded prophecy that just leads to absolute ruins.
Okay, let's put some numbers to this to really grasp the magnitude. 2.95 billion naira. Just let that sink in for a second. That massive figure is at the heart of the money laundering allegations that recently got Jude Okoye, the elder brother and longtime manager, arrested by the EFCC. To put that into perspective, that is equivalent to over 1.9 million US dollars. The EFCC claims this staggering amount was allegedly funneled into multiple bank accounts through his record label, Northside Music Limited.
To really understand how bad things got, let's walk through this timeline of just rapid, absolute destruction. The cracks burst violently into the public eye in 2017. A video leak showing a literal brawl in lawyer Festus Keyamo's office, where Jude allegedly threatened to put Peter in a coffin. Fast forward to 2024, and things have escalated to EFCC petitions, interrogations, and actual arrests over diverted royalties. And the craziest part? By April 2026, Peter officially announced he was changing his birthday to November 30th, just purely to symbolically sever that twin bond with Paul.
Part 1. The Prophecy. Mama Josephine's Ignored Warning.
So breaking decades of silence from the family's ancestral home in Jos, the eldest brother Henry Okoye dropped a bombshell testimony in August 2026. He revealed that Mama Josephine was strictly, and I mean strictly, against Jude managing the boys. She apparently knew his character all too well and had deep-seated reservations. She absolutely did not want him anywhere near the business.
Because, before the millions rolled in, P-Squared was this really collaborative, grassroots family effort. Henry was sponsoring them and acting as their bodyguard. Their sister Lillian was collecting gate fees at gigs in Abuja, and brother Tony was out there as a backup dancer and choreographer. But then, around 2004, Jude arrives on the scene and takes total administrative control. And the tragic irony here? It was actually Tony who begged Mama Josephine to ignore her gut instinct and hire Jude, just to keep it in the family.
Part 2. The Corporate Takeover. Now, Henry testified that Peter and Paul had verbally promised him a 20% share of future music royalties for being their early sponsor. But the moment Jude took over, he systematically dismantled those early agreements. When Henry finally asked about his 20%, Jude's response was just brutally cold. He allegedly said, "What do you mean 20%? If their plane crashes, you'd just be sitting at home." That was the exact moment Jude's ruthless consolidation of power really began, effectively pushing the early supporters right out of the core business.
Part 3. Siphoning the Royalties. The Shell Game.
Let's look at the actual business structure for their management company, Northside Entertainment. The initial equity split was incredibly lopsided. According to judicial testimonies, Jude held a controlling 40% share. That leaves the actual performing artists, Peter and Paul, with just 30% each. Plus, Jude acted as the sole administrator and the only initial signatory to the multi-currency accounts, giving him absolute, total operational control over all the money coming in from digital platforms. But here is the absolute smoking gun that Peter claims to have stumbled upon during a Lagos State tax audit. A completely parallel, secret company created in 2015 called Northside Music Limited. And look at the ownership of this one. Jude's wife, Ifeoma, holds 80%. Jude holds 20%. And Peter and Paul, 0. Absolute 0. Peter alleges this exact entity was used to siphon hundreds of millions of naira and over $1 million in digital catalog revenue right out from under the joint P-Square accounts. Now, it's really important we look at both sides of this ongoing legal battle impartially. On one hand, Peter petitioned the EFCC claiming he was financially disenfranchised and kept entirely in the dark about true ownership structures and back-end streaming data. But in stark contrast, Jude firmly rejects all of this. He maintains his innocence for sure, insisting that every single payment was properly documented and distributed exactly according to their existing agreements. In fact, Jude has publicly accused Peter of media manipulation, claiming Peter is actively dodging the court appearances where they're supposed to settle this.
Part 4, Severed Bloodlines and the Climax.
Under Jude's management monopoly, the family just fragmented completely. The rest of the Okoyes were essentially boxed out of the P-square wealth. Remember Henry? Lost his 20% share and was allegedly totally ignored by Jude during a 2-month hospital stay. Tony, the guy who convinced Mama to hire Jude in the first place, ended up isolated in Lagos. Sisters Lillian and Mary were excluded from the financial legacy, and Peter, of course, became entirely alienated from his own twin brother, Paul, who decided to align with Jude.
And honestly, this hostility wasn't just about money. It was deeply, deeply personal. During one incredibly tense family meeting, Peter's wife Lola got a freezing reception from Jude and Paul. It got so toxic that the family matriarch actually told her, "Young woman, we the Okoye family have decided that you should leave our son alone."
Yet, before Mama Josephine tragically passed away in India in 2012, something shifted. She reportedly acknowledged Peter's child with Lola and, according to Peter, issued one final dying demand: Jude and Paul were to formally apologize to Lola. But that apology never came, never happened. In fact, Peter claims Jude actively tried to sabotage his wedding to Lola a year later, completely boycotting the ceremony.
All of this, the ignored dying wishes, the physical threats in law offices, the alleged secret accounts, it all pushed them past the point of no return. We've watched the EFCC step in and make arrests. We've seen the secret accounts uncovered. And, most shockingly, we've seen Peter take the unprecedented, incredibly symbolic step of legally changing his birthday to November 30th, literally just to erase his twin connection to Paul.
Which brings us to a final, really provocative thought. When you look at the absolute destruction of what was once a unified family and a continent-dominating musical empire, you have to ask yourself, did Jude Okoye architect and build the P-square empire like he claims? Or did he merely oversee the exact familial ruins that Mama Josephine predicted all those years ago? It's a fascinating, deeply tragic saga that is still unfolding in the courts right now. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the story behind the headlines.